Travelers on the Omnibus occasionally touches on mature subject matter with mature language. As such, the audience discretion is advised.
Our homework or whatever.
And we are here, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the second regular episode of Travelers on the Omnibus. My name is James McCarthy.
My name is Ethan.
I'm Jody Kight.
I'm Brady Davis.
See, they asked me to point at them, and I was like, "No, this is a free for all. Yeah, Whoever wanted to jump out,
he was going to be an asshole.
Fucker. I didn't decide. I was born this way, sir.
Oh, okay, Gaga.
There you go. That's our mistake for not just assuming that you're going to be an asshole.
There you go.
We thought of 3 options. He gave us a 4th.
No, he gave us the J option.
No, I was just lazy.
Maybe he forgot for a second.
No, I didn't forget. I was like, let me just see what happened, because I was recording part of that opening talk.
No, I looked over and the button was red. I'm like, you fucker.
It's going in.
Yeah.
It's all going in. Gentlemen, now that we've done just jump in for like who is going to introduce themselves, let's do another jump in. What have y'all been up to this week?
I watched Batman Sunday.
You watched Batman?
Oh, yeah.
All right,
Batman?
So that's
the new Batman.
So that's 2 of the 4.
The Batman.
Ethan, have you watched Batman?
I have not watched the Batman
so
yet.
2 have not watched, 2 have watched Batman. First impressions and or review with no spoilers. What'd you think?
With no spoilers, I loved it. I don't care that there really isn't the Bruce Wayne character as far as like, the playboy, like living it up and never sleeping. They kind of left that out. That's not really a spoiler. You get that right away. Yeah. I really enjoyed all the performances, how, for the most part, outside of the Batman character, how most of the crime in the city was very low-key. The Penguin's not over the top. He's just part of the mob. Yep. I really enjoyed that.
Carmine Falcone, I think that was John. For what I've been told, John Turturro.
That was, and that was. I don't remember seeing him in a serious role before that. He nailed the fuck out of that role.
He's been in a lot of serious roles before. A lot of the lesser known Coen Brothers movies. He's in a more serious role.
Was he in Blood Simple?
I don't believe so, but he was in like Barton Fink.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. No,
I haven't seen Barton Fink.
It's a weird movie.
Yeah, I've heard.
It's a Coen Brothers movie.
Yeah, but to me that doesn't mean weird movie. That means a great movie usually.
I will say fair, but they're usually esoteric.
They are. They're esoteric and very nihilist.
Yeah,
because they're big nihilists.
Yeah.
Right.
So much so that one of them had to stop directing altogether, and the latest one was only done
by
one of the brothers.
The other one was like, "Fuck it, I'm doing Macbeth." There you go.
It's too much. Yeah. I can't handle
like
it.
What Denzel?
Denzel Washington.
Yeah,
and,
I'm all for that.
Dang, what's her name? Yeah. Frances McDormand as Lady Macbeth.
McDormand?
I'm sorry, McDormand.
Yeah. Okay.
As Lady Macbeth.
But it's a runtime of almost 3 hours. It's like 2 hours and like 55 minutes or something.
See, that's the thing that's keeping me out of the
and the thing is, though, it's all deliberate. The pacing is very slow, but it's got a purpose to it. And I enjoyed seeing the detective side of Batman, which is not something that you see normally outside of the comics and the animated series. Like, one day I would hope for us to talk about the animated Batman, because that's probably some of the best stuff they've done with that character.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was my Batman for quite some time. I grew up like after school watching that Batman.
I watched it religiously when it came out. Like, it was so good.
I recently got the complete series of that.
Oh, nice.
When the CW did the Crisis, basically the Crisis on Infinite Earth stuff that they did on the CW, and the fact that they brought in Kevin Conroy at like live action as one of the
really cool.
Batman, that was exceptional. I really appreciated that. Because he's kind of my Batman as well.
Yeah. I had my father. He had the DVD box sets of like various seasons. I remember growing up watching them. I absolutely love them.
Oh yeah.
They're so awesome.
And I want to say not Brave and the Bold, but
Batman Beyond.
Batman Beyond, yes.
That one was good
Batman
too.
Beyond.
It was all right.
Brave and the Bold, actually, like for being a little bit more lighthearted, is actually not that bad either.
Well, it's not a bad thing when they.
Diedrich Bader is the voice of that one. The only other thing I remember him being of is one of the friends on the Drew Carey show.
Yeah. He's been in a couple other things, but yeah, he's good.
I think he was the Batman in the Harley Quinn animated that was initially on DC Universe and then moved over to HBO
it was Kevin Conroy.
That was Kevin Conroy?
That was almost everybody from the animated series was in that one, except
Hamill wasn't.
Except
Hamill
there wasn't a joke. You're talking about the.
I'm talking about the animated Harley
yes,
Quinn.
He is.
That
I'm
was
sorry.
Okay,
I'm thinking of Batman and Harley Quinn, which was like the DC animated movie.
The one where Nightwing is
Nightwing and Harley Quinn bang.
Good job, Nightwing.
Yeah.
10 out of 10. Before we start getting into more bat sex,
we'll have to definitely talk about Batman at some point.
Brady, talk about something else. Like, what have you been doing this week?
Oh, okay, yeah. So I, like Jody, went and saw a movie. No, I did not see the Batman for a third time in as many weeks.
That would be 9 hours of Batman.
That would be a lot of Batman.
That's the Lord of the Rings of Batman.
I've never watched a movie 3 times in theaters, and Batman is good, but it's not the movie that I would do that with. But I went and saw the horror movie X, which is an A24 movie about
sold. I'm getting a ticket now. Like
these, it takes place in the late 70s, I think 1979 in Texas, and a group of filmmakers go to this rent out this bungalow in this old people. They're like 80 years old. Their farm, and they're gonna shoot a porno, and they're gonna do it without the old people knowing, and then bad things ensue. It is a really good movie. So my favorite horror movie of all time is Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Mm-hmm.
This gives this does Texas Chainsaw Massacre without having to be just redo Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Gotcha.
Like it's gory. You can feel it's like that movie where
there's
you can
an homage kind of feel to it.
It's a definite homage without just copying the exact same
copy and paste.
It does its own thing.
Right.
You can tell that it's like heavily influenced.
But it is very good. I really, really liked it. It's one of those movies that's kind of stuck in my head since I've watched it.
I'm definitely gonna see that.
Very interesting.
It is a really, really, really good movie.
Good stuff. I like that stuff. Ethan, what have you been up to?
2 things I have been happening. One, Elden Ring. Since the last time I talked about it, I unfortunately haven't been able to play it. However, there have been 2 patches that have come out in the past week. So hopefully I'll be able to experiment with it again and hopefully come back with a game review.
Okay, very nice.
Second,
if you can get past the first cinematic, he can't even get past the cinematic, folks. Scrub Gamer.
Yep.
Hashtag Scrub Gamer.
That's how not good he is.
Hashtag Scrub Skinner.
Yeah.
Second thing, I picked up the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney trilogy on this Nintendo Switch.
Nice.
I wanted to play it whenever when they had the 3DS version come out.
Yeah.
Never got the opportunity to get it. I got it now. I'm very much enjoying it.
It's very like that, along with Professor Layton. Professor Layton to me is like advanced level puzzle solving. But that Ace Attorney's always been a really good one to kind of enter in on. So.
Yeah, I played a little bit of Ace Attorney on the original DS.
Yeah.
That was,
I love, as my former profession, I love the presentation of it. The way it works. It's very British court.
It's definitely.
I love that very much.
Yeah, that's one of those that I know about. But never got around to playing.
It very much has its silly moments, but at the same time, it also has its the moments of being serious and try to have a very
I would
serious
argue without those silly moments, I don't think that's as good a game.
Oh, absolutely,
because it breaks the tension for a lot of it.
You got something to break up the monotony.
Yeah. Jay, what have you been up to?
Ethan stole it right from me.
I like how you just like cut that out, one to stop him up, and then also to just throw me on the spot. Well, I'm gonna tell you, I mentioned it last week. I'm gonna say it again. I have played a shitload of Return to Dark Tower. I spent $250 on this thing. I'm getting my $250 out of it. Again, fantastic presentation, fantastic production. The game mostly it plays itself. You only have to do like a little bit of upkeep and stuff. The app integration is not perfect, but it is exceptional. I don't like app games where you need the app and then the app makes everything complicated. This is, you drop your skull at the end of the round, an event events might happen, or no events happen. If the no, you just go on to your next player. If the events happen, you go one by one. It doesn't completely dominate the game. And I'll also say that the way you fight monsters in that game is you take the fight action and then you go to the card. and you go to the phone or the iPad or whatever you're using for. A number of cards are dealt out for that creature. You will pick X amount. If it's a level 2 monster, you'll pick 2 cards. If it's level 3, 3, level 4, 4, 5, and the big monster, the adversary at the end, is a level 5 monster. It is very easy. Just tap those cards, and then you go one insight. And can you beat the card, or can you not beat the card? And you develop advantages throughout the game that you can spend to lessen the impact of the bad stuff, or maybe even turn it into a positive for yourself. If you can get through the cards, oh, fine, good. If you can't beat the cards, you get corruptions. If you get 2 corruptions, you're in danger of losing the game for everybody, because on the 3rd corruption, everyone loses in the cooperative game, even if it's only just one person. I'm currently 1-3. We played 2 games last Thursday. As of the recording of this, we lost both of them here at the shop.
Yep.
The one I had played the Tuesday before that, we lost that one as well. We finally won. Finally got a good victory on that one. An entire kingdom was literally flooded with plague, but we managed to beat out the bad guy before the very end. It's exactly the way I would like a cooperative game to be. Everyone's choices matter. Everyone has a stake in the game. Everyone has the ability to interject. It's like, you can have that alpha player. It's very hard to get rid of that alpha player, but it really feels like I've got my own kingdom that I've got to kind of take care of, and I can maybe go into the other kingdoms to help out. I have my own little thing, which leaves you your space with your own little thing to kind of figure out how you want to go about that.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple things I liked about it. For one, it's the minor randomness that's in the game with the challenges with the cards that you don't know exactly what the challenges are. You cannot game that game. I don't think you can game that game for multiple reasons, and it's so hard to grind out your advantages. Like I even if you were like at the beginning of the game, all right, out of the 4 of us, I think 2 of us should try and grind out our advantages. There's so many different enemy types that your character might not be apt to fight the mass majority of something that's happening right then. So you can't really use that kind of strategy.
Yeah. And for those wondering, like, advantages are what you use to make the cards that you're dealt with an enemy easier, and can even make it to where you get a positive thing instead of a negative
and
thing.
Not just enemies, but also dungeons. And I love the way dungeons work, because the dungeons are run through the app, and you basically have a procedurally generated map, and you start out and you may have one or more torch points. You click the torch point, something bad happens. You can, if you have the advantage that goes for that dungeon, you can spend the advantage. Maybe it turns into a good thing, or it turns into nothing. And then you have to keep going until you hit a target room. And what I love about that is it's just like exploring a dungeon. If I go all the way to the northeast and the target room's in the southwest, I'm going in the wrong way, but I don't know that.
Right.
I think it's a very well done production.
I love the time management they do on that game too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like you're playing no longer than like an hour and 15 minutes, hour 30 at the most.
Yeah, it's 6 rounds. At the end of the 6th round, if you haven't won, you've lost. Again, if you get 2, if you have 3 corruptions on one hero, you lose. If you go to place a skull on the board, in order to take a skull on the board, and you can't do it, you lose. It's very cutthroat. Excuse me. The competitive game, which not this week but next week, I wanted to try to in the competitive game of those ones, because I want to show off the cooperative game to the folks at the shop.
Yeah.
That shop being McNarb Gaming in Goshen, Mississippi. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Greg.
There we go. And I want to try that cooperative game one more time. I want us to try it again with Ash Strider again, because now I've got a better idea about it. The one final thing I will say: the final boss. They're an enemy. It's a battle just like you would with a regular foe, except that advantages spent on lowering those cards are permanent. After you get through the first card, you can retreat, and the monster will go someplace else, and then someone else has to fight him. But whatever advantages you spent to make that card easier will remain with that card, and hopefully you pick that card up again when you're going through the rest of the cards. I think there's like 9 to 10 cards per adversary.
I think so,
So you have to go through a lot, or you have to just get lucky and spike that after everybody's had kind of a chance.
I'll play that game anytime it's laid out.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Something that I liked about the game is oftentimes with an app-driven game, sometimes the app, like, you can almost play the game without having the board there, but this one you can't do that. Like it does app integration well without like taking the place of the actual board
Right.
game.
Yes.
Because there are some games that I have that I really like, that I play with my kids and stuff, but I like having the board out there and building the map and whatever, but I feel like oftentimes I'm like, oh man, we could just play this on the app on my tablet, and we don't even have to put out all this stuff.
Yeah. I feel bad for kind of crapping on Ignacy Trevicek again, but one of the reasons why I was not a big fan of app-driven content in games was First Martians, and it was just done so clunkily. Like, I love Robinson Crusoe, and I said that last week, but I'll say it again this week. I love Detective. I think it's LA. Is it LA Detective, or is that the expansion to the Detective?
The expansion is LA.
Is LA Detective.
LA
but yeah,
something.
the Detective game that he came up, that was also very good. It's one of the reasons why it's an app game. It's a similar. It's it's something and something crime and
Chronicles of Crime.
Chronicles of Crime. Thank you. I would like to go back and try that one again because
that one I do want to try too.
Because that one, I was still under a sour taste of this kind of stuff. And it's like, do I really need an app to do this? Like the one game prior to this that is mostly app driven was the XCOM board game, the Fantasy Flight Putt, and I like that game.
Yeah,
I did like that game, but First Martians just really. It hurt my feelings and my soul all at the same time. And so it's one of the reasons why I've like app-based games kind of always kind of, well, I don't want to say always, but kind of like fell out of favor with me. So yeah, there you go. Current review, super positive. When we give you when we get some competitive going, we'll let you know on that as well.
Yep.
So, anything else we want to mention to the good people before we go on to our main topic?
Play the Dark Tower if you can.
Play the Dark Tower.
Play it.
It is $180 retail, I believe. It's kind of rough, and none of the good Kickstarter stuff. Oh, final thing, Restoration Games, the Dark Horde expansion. If you just get the base game, all of the foes are cardboard. With the Dark Horde expansion, they're all in plastic. Like everything's in plastic, and a bunch of stuff that you use to mark quests on the board are also in plastic if you get that one. So that was a very big bonus. And again, shout out to Restoration Games for their amazing production value.
Restoration Games has done a very good job with pretty much everything that I've seen them, that I've played, that they've done.
There you go.
Thank you, Restoration Games.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, our topic this week, we have some homework. If you're riding a bus, you're usually going to school, you got some homework. Our homework is a book report this week. We're going to present to you our thoughts and feelings on the first book in the Chronicles of Amber series, Nine Princes in Amber. Nine Princes in Amber was written by Roger Zelazny and published the first time in 1970 by Doubleday Books. It is, in my opinion, one of the best, if not the best, fantasy novel that has ever been written. I say that with no sense of trepidation or fear. Lord of the Rings is good. The Hobbit is good. Other fantasy works that, if you can think about, want to come to mind, feel free to put those out there. But in my opinion, the best fantasy novel ever written was Nine Princes in Amber. I open the floor with that, gentlemen. Who wants to take it further?
Well, I think we need to probably say so Jay and Jody have read this book before.
Yes.
It's been a while, but yeah.
Ethan and I, coming into this fresh. We've never read this book before.
Right.
That is very true. Yeah, this is your first kind
This
of
is my first reading.
through
This is Ethan's first reading of this book.
So.
And with that statement being said before the recording, I made the comments that it was very difficult for me to follow the story. And I've said this on multiple occasions on multiple podcasts. I am the youngest in our friend group, quote unquote. Both Jody and Jay are in their 40s, Brady in his 30s. I am just now 21, so this is a good.
He's a widow baby.
I'm a wee babe.
That was terrifying, Brady. Please don't do that again, or do it again. It's a free world. Let's do it.
So Ethan, I have a take on that. I have a take on why it was difficult for you to read it. And I am not saying this as a shot on anybody who reads young adult fiction like Harry Potter or anything like that. Like, what books have you normally read?
I've read the Scythe trilogy, all the Harry Potters, pretty much everything by Rick Riordan.
Right.
Which all those can fall under young adult.
Right, and there's nothing wrong with that, but young adult books, as far as I know from my personal experiences, that's basically conventional storytelling. As far as, like, you put forward what's happening, you might have some mystery in there, but the reader can follow along what's happening, right? Amber wasn't conventional, and neither was a lot of fantasy in the 70s anyway.
Yeah.
There's a lot of obtuse abstract
fantasy and sci-fi.
Well,
both.
yeah,
Oh, yeah,
right.
definitely with
Especially
sci-fi.
in the 70s, there's a lot of abstract thoughts and follows a lot of storytelling cues like Lovecraft. Not that it's the same as far as like what the subject material is, but it's a narrative, at least for a while at the beginning of it. It's a narrative from the perspective of your main character, which is Corwin. And so, you're following him, and then when it gets to, there's some normalcies at the beginning. We'll walk through it here in a second. But I'm assuming that once it starts getting into the esoteric explanations of the transitional things that happen from him from one place to another, that's what probably started like losing you a little bit.
Yeah. It wasn't after like the first 3 chapters, I started being able to follow everything, get somewhat of a grasp on what's going on, and then
right, because you were under the perception that it was a traditional fantasy story at the beginning.
Let me go one further on that. I think that is the perfect feeling to have from that first reading of that, because the opening of the book is Corwin of Amber. It wakes up. He doesn't know who he is. He has complete amnesia. He's trying to piece everything together. He knows he's in some off-the-book clinic, or he figures that out kind of quickly. He's a bit roguish, just a bit roguish, I guess I would say. I'm being flagged down by Brady Davis.
Speaking of the beginning, I just want to highlight.
Oh, here we go.
The opening line, which I think is a very good opening line. It was starting to end after what seemed most of eternity to me. I think that's a pretty good.
That line is very
intriguing line.
And that line is very loaded, and you only figure that out by reading further into the book. Thank you for bringing that up. I had forgotten to bring my copy. I'm prepared with everything else. I'd forgot to bring mine. Meanwhile, Brady has everything tabbed. He literally treated this as a book report.
I have tabs and I have highlighted stuff.
Yes,
that's awesome.
It's very good
because, and we'll probably get into this. I liked the story. It was very interesting, and I guess. This is part 1 of a
10-part series. It really broken up into 2 5-parts. But I want to get back to Ethan. It's like, I think feeling confused at the very beginning, I think, is a perfect way to come into this, because the character himself is confused. And that gives you an immediate rapport with them because they don't know what's going on.
It allows me to have my own relation with the main character. It allows me to understand exactly what he's going through.
It's a good way to introduce the world, because this person is learning things as whenever you can come up with a reason for your protagonist to learn things as you learn things. Now, often times they do the lazy thing of this is just a new person in the world or something. This does it in an interesting way of this is a person who has amnesia and doesn't know who he is, finding out about these things.
Yeah.
And I would capstone the confusion part of it. After those like first couple of chapters, do you start understanding the way Corwin is understanding?
Yeah.
Zelazny, to me, and again, this is the reason why I say this is the best fantasy novel of all time. He does this in about, depending on the size of your volume, is about 180 to 190 pages. Some things don't get described well in a 300-page book or a 400-page book. In half that amount of space, he creates a world for you and paints it for you so vividly and so really, even though we're dealing with very fantastical things once the true plot of the book starts getting going. I think it's just an exceptional, it's one of the best openings, I think, in all of literature, because you literally start from zero along with him, and then you're building up alongside him. And there's these little hints here and there of what this person actually is.
And also, it's my personal opinion, one of the best uses of the trope of having amnesia for your protagonist, because usually it's a cop out.
I've been hesitant to start this because I don't want to get us moving too far down a negative thing too much. But
hey, look, no, if that's where the road's taking us, let's walk down that road.
I will want to say, I enjoyed the book. There are just several frustrations that I had with the book. Several things that, as I was reading the book, really irked me. First of all, being it started out really strong, I think, with the amnesia, but there comes to a point when they're actually starting to make that journey where it seems like everything is just magically coming to him, and that gets very frustrating.
Yeah.
Oh, he will say something and be like, "Oh, I just somehow it just came to me.
It felt right to say it. Kind of those kind of events,
and that got very frustrating.
Yeah, he does. I will say this: he says that a lot. It just felt like the right thing to say at the time. Like he's playing a lot on emotion and on reading the room, and he's almost too exceptional at it.
That starts out very good. But like I said, when they start making that journey, he gets to where it seems like things just keep coming to him magically, and it's like that's where it got a little ham-fisted. I was very interested in the beginning when he's like trying to play everybody and trying to
that first interaction with Florimel.
His
with
first
his sister
was very interesting,
right?
But later in the book, it just seems to come out of nowhere,
right?
Yeah. Going back to the first encounter he had with Floria, Corwin is a very cocky character. Very arrogant, very pompous of himself.
Right.
He feels like he is the most confident person in the room.
Yeah.
I don't think I could say I've seen another fictional character with that kind of character.
He has a lot of siblings.
I think you see that in characters, and they're typically always the bad guy.
Right.
They're typically always the person that you're rooting against, but there's some positivity to him and also just again because he's the first person you meet in this world, and he's just in the dark as you are. I think developing that camaraderie with the reader, the way it's set up in there, I think it's just tremendous. I do think it's one of the best setups. It's some of the best world building I think I've ever seen in literature.
Yeah.
Full stop.
One of my favorite things about this was the magic system. It's a super, super soft, like it's pillow down soft magic system. Maybe later in the books, maybe later they explain more about how the magic system works. But in this book, they're very vague about it.
There's a lot of vagaries.
But there's a lot of interesting things that they still do with it.
Right.
The revelation slowly. That was the part of that journey that I really liked, where they revealed slowly, like you're trying to work out, as the character's trying to work out, how is this all working? And so that was like that was something that I liked, where I was running through, okay, well, it could be this thing, and it could be, but it might could be this thing, and are they messing with time? Are they messing with multiple universes? Are they messing with this or that? Like there was a lot of things that I was, and they've even hinted in later in the book, like people have different ways of messing with using the magic that they have.
and people that are not part of the lineage have died trying to use this system of magic, if we want to call it that.
Yeah.
But our book starts with our protagonist Corwin. He wakes up in a hospital bed, and he's confined, right? He's strapped to it in some way.
I think he is mostly confined, but I think a lot of the confinement was the fact that he had broken both his legs.
Right.
Yeah.
And when he wakes up, it's like, oh, my legs are fine. And that's the first of
And
one.
they kept him drugged, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the first seed of something that is very important for that character. The other thing is, I like the way Zelazny puts in very subtle things. So at one point, an orderly comes in, hey, you need to take these pills. I don't want to take these pills.
Right.
You're going to take these pills. And then just very subtly, just as a line, he reaches over to the metal bars that are his
on his
bed and just rips them out. And it's a line that you almost miss.
Yeah,
He shouldn't just be able to just rip a metal bar directly out of a bed
Right.
and start wailing on somebody. So it's very subtle. He doesn't bring attention to it, but it is a part of the scene. And if you're paying attention to what you're reading, you realize that Corwin is something special, more so than just maybe like a noir person. Like there's a lot of noir in the first bit of it, which I think I kind of like. Where it's
Definitely.
like the guy's waking up, he has amnesia, he has a mystery he's got to solve, and it gets a lot bigger from there after that.
Right. He gets. Go ahead, Ethan.
Go, Ethan.
Like I miss that entire beginning aspect of him ripping off the metal bar on his bed until you pointed out to me, Jay, and then I read back through it. Yes, he ripped off the metal beam on his bed. He also broke the cast mold on both of his legs.
And again, it's played for just matter, like in the moment, it's played matter of fact. And it may be like you're reading it the first time and you think, well, that's just something that's happening. But again, he sets these things up in the beginning. He sets off I'm using a film term, he sets up multiple Chekhov's guns, and he pays them off more so than he doesn't. And so like all of these things that just kind of come out of nowhere or should have come out of nowhere, there is some anchor earlier in the story that kind of hooks that up.
Right. And he basically threatens his way out of the situation.
Yeah.
One other thing I liked about it, I liked how vague they kept referencing his brothers. As you'll learn in the book, Corwin is one brother of 8, making up the 9 princes
That are alive.
Currently. Of Amber. And I like how vague they kept that with his first interaction with his sister Florin.
Florimel, yeah.
Florin.
She's references both Florimel and Flora.
Flora. Yeah, Flora.
He doesn't know how many siblings he has, so he vaguely asks questions and all that.
He doesn't even know her real name at first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's able to ask vague questions and get all of those answers in is really interesting.
Yeah.
It's really when he comes across the cards that he
Yes,
starts
the
putting
cards.
things together.
Yeah, it's those first anchors back to the world that he had known that starts bringing him in, and then again that's further paid off down the line
Right.
in the moment that, for me, like is the true halfway point in the
Right.
story where he goes from still learning to I am back in this now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brady has the book open again. He's
No,
about
no,
to
no,
he's about to give us some information.
That was a really interesting part where when he gets back into it. Again, like there were issues that I had with it. One of the issues that I had was it seems like after that, Zelazny stops being as descriptive about the reason that everything is just matter of factly, like he's just doing things, and we're the character of Corwin understands why he's doing these things, but me as the reader did not necessarily understand why he was doing those things. And I mean that might be on purpose, but that was also kind of frustrated where you didn't get as much detail in the things that I would like. And that also leads to, I feel like as
His
the
motives.
as the book
Yeah.
went on, it became less descriptive.
Like you're more in the dark than the guy with amnesia, essentially.
Yeah. And I'm not, and he's my point of view character, so I'm not getting.
Well, he's
the
also the
detail.
self-narrator.
Yeah.
And this might be trying to hitch too many things together. Like I might look like the Always Sunny in Philadelphia with the big conspiracy board that's pointing at it right now. But I hold this book in very high regard.
Yeah.
So I'm also kind of coming from that angle as well.
Right.
I think a lot of that is, and you're gonna you almost find out within like literally the first page. Corwin has trust issues.
Yeah.
He is your narrator. Like he is narrating his story, and he is sometimes referencing specifically you, the reader. He is talking directly to you. Like he mentions things that he won't go into detail about. I wonder if that was a conscious choice by Zelazny to be kind of, I don't have enough time to explain this all to you. And in addition, I don't necessarily trust you, reader, because I've got a lot of stuff that I've got to take care of. Like, again, he's dragging you into this world by treating you the same way he treats every other person in this story. Maybe I'm going far afield on that. I think...
No, I can see that.
I think like if it wasn't planned out, I think it was a happy accident, and it ends up working, in my opinion, in the book's favor.
Yeah.
But I can definitely see...
there's definitely a lot of details that are glossed over in
the-
certain situations.
The part that really frustrated, because I like most of my favorite like fantasy books and sci-fi books are very descriptive. And the point where I really noticed it, and this is later in the book, but I'm going to read this line, but I don't think it's a spoiler. And if it is, we can just cut this, whatever. Something very, very bad happens to Corwin. And he goes and he tells the reader, that which he said was done to me, and mercifully I fainted before it was finished. That is all we get of that.
Right.
And it had a huge consequence, and I feel like that was kind of just a matter of fact
the
thing
person
done.
who did that to him had that done. Like literally, that's
Yeah.
what the statement there is. Say like he's leaving it to you to describe in your own head, like not without him telling you
To fill in
what
the
happened
blanks
to
of
him.
what happened to him.
Because he was told what was going to happen to him, and then he's telling you, yes, this is what happened to me, and I'm not going to go into detail because that was something so injurious to him.
Yeah.
Like to kill him would have been a mercy compared to what happened to him there.
I guess it might be. My issues with this might be me, I just like a more descriptive. I guess most of the books, the fantasy books that I really like, have a little bit more flowery language, I guess, and that sounds a little dismissive, but I like that stuff. Like I like that shit. Like I eat that shit up. Like
I would like to move on just a little bit here.
I don't want to sit here just yucking.
Go ahead, interject.
Just a quick capstone here. What I respect about that is that he's allowing the reader to use their own interpretation, like to put their own ideas as to what this scene might have looked like. Or if they don't want to engage it at all because it is a kind of a horrifying thing to even consider, so that he's giving you also the option to not think about it and just say, it happened, it was terrible. If you want to let your mind rove on that, you can go into that scene. I think if he describes that out, he removes that option for you. Yeah. You may not want that option. You may have preferred having, and honestly, to me, that is an aesthetic choice and is a personal choice for the reader. And I completely respect anyone who would prefer to have that. I just think that by saying that, you can then craft your own scene of what it looked like.
Yeah, I get that, and I understand that. I guess to me, it just seemed like he could have. It could have been a little less vague and matter of fact. Like, I don't want somebody describing that horrible thing happening in a way that you would also describe, I don't know,
clipping toenails. Yeah, no,
like,
that's fair.
Yeah.
But I
think it's because I prefer more of a.
At the respect
More
of the
from that.
importance of that action and what it meant, like I can see why you want to have it to be drawn out a little bit more. I think that's just a point of disagreement here.
Yeah.
I love
okay.
I get to make it in my own head, and you wish we had a little.
Yeah,
more.
I see the positives of
and
that.
I will admit it's a little bit of an inconsistency because in the beginning, especially when he's building the world,
In the beginning, it's
you have
very descriptive.
very descriptive adjectives and adverbs in multitudes, absolute multitudes.
Because at first I was like, and I just want to let me say this.
Yeah.
Because I do want to move on.
No,
I don't wanna just
no.
sit here
Talk it out.
yucking everybody's yum.
No.
Yum. When I got to that point, I was like, wait, is this book just not descriptive? And then as I was going back through and highlighting things, I was like, no, it's very descriptive. It just seems like it gets less descriptive after a certain point.
There you go.
But
Tunnel
again,
vision for completion of the story.
I think some of that also has to do with it's a short book. It's a novella. So
and I apologize.
No.
No, it's fine.
Because I know you want to jump in. And I know
It's
you
all
got
good.
Some
It's
you
all
got some
good.
good thoughts.
I'm gonna
on
let
this.
you finish.
I'm gonna let you finish. But
not married with him anymore.
But
that's why I was hesitant to bring up some of these things.
No, we love it. We love the passion. We love the passion.
I would rather have a argument with a friend that will lead to both of us
This is a debate,
understanding
not an
things
argument.
better and where we're coming from on something than to just leave it fallow.
This is an intellectual
and rot in the
conversation
field.
that we're having, opposing viewpoints on. That's all that. That's all that is.
Yes, and also we're doing this so that Jody doesn't get to talk, and I think that's funny as fuck.
I'm
So,
actually completely
ultimate
okay with it
you go.
because that's less work for me.
Yeah, well, Jody, good news. I
right.
forgot the point I was going to make, so, sir,
Oh, all right, sweet.
go for it.
That means I win.
Well, what?
I just pick it.
One of the things that
Maybe not.
we've completely glossed over outside of our little idiosyncrasies about the story and how things were told is what the fuck the setting is. So Amber,
Okay, hang on. I don't have a PhD in metaphysics.
Yeah,
so,
for real.
So, as simply as
Amber
you
is
can,
the perfect city. Amber is.
Oh, there's a perfect.
Go ahead, Brady.
Oh,
Let
Brady's
me see
got
if
it.
you find-
Brady,
I
you came
remember,
prepared.
I can't remember where it is, but there's a perfect line that explains this, and I hope, or at least I hope it explains it. All roads lead to Amber.
Yeah.
And then later, it's not an exact quote because it's a longer sentence, but like they basically say like all cities are a shadow of Amber.
Yeah,
one
or a
version
reflection,
of
or
Amber.
a reflection. Yeah,
of Amber.
there's talks of mirrors.
Yeah,
Mirror.
as well.
Specifically as a reflection, the city of Rebma, which
Rebma.
which I will say that the travel to Rebma once they get to almost the foot of the gate of Rebma. That's one of my favorite parts of that book because
That
it
was
is
a very
so
good part.
Yeah.
it is so vivid and it's tense and it's not something that you really see in any, like, especially with the fantasy genre.
Yeah.
You have a lot of opportunities to go crazy that don't go near as crazy as some of the stuff Zelazny.
I want to get to that city particularly here in a second.
Yeah.
So we have Amber, which is touted as the perfect city, and as far as the reader needs to know, Amber is another plane of existence.
Yes.
It's like another dimension. Okay, it's another world, if you will, and then we have Earth, which is and Chaos. Right. Is that one and the same?
You have Amber and Chaos.
You have Amber and Chaos, and Earth is the shadow. Okay.
Earth is one of a multitude of shadows
Right.
between Amber and Chaos. And if we go a little too further, now we're going to start to touch on books 2 and 4.
I don't want to go any deeper than that, but basically we have two major worlds, and Earth is in the shadow of both of those worlds.
Yeah.
All
as far as we know.
realities. The way I kind of look at it is Amber is the one true reality, and every other reality
They will
that
often
exists.
say in the book, the real Earth, when they talk about Amber.
Right.
And they will talk about the shadow Earth being the world that we know.
Right, and as far as the reader knows, at some point, the only people that can travel from one place to another are people that are in the royal lineage of Amber, such as Corwin and all of his kinfolk, which we will maybe touch upon a little bit.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
I will just do it like this.
Random teams up with him pretty early.
If I were making a D&D group, Corwin is the bard, Random is the rogue, Julian is the ranger, Blaze is the paladin, Kane is the fighter that goes like dark shit, and Eric is the asshole.
Very much so.
Whatever D&D class you think is the biggest asshole, that's Eric.
Eric is such an asshole, he doesn't even need a fancy name.
Yeah.
He does
doesn't
not
need
fuck your
fancy
fancy names.
Like you have subtitles. He's just Eric.
Yeah.
I love the blending. Like you have people named Eric, Brand, Julian, maybe not so much Brand, but names that are common to us. And then you get hit with stuff like Benedict and Court, which feel a little bit foreign.
Yeah.
And then a dude named Random. No one names their kid Random.
Right.
What the hell? I like the idea. And because
And Blaze spelled Bleys.
Right.
I pronounce it Blaise, and I honestly think you can have almost a 20-minute debate on how to pronounce some of these names.
That and Florimel or Flora.
Yeah.
Like Flora is easy,
Yeah.
but is it Florimel or Flamel? Like,
Yeah, right. Right.
No.
The father's name is Oberon.
Yeah.
Oberon.
Yeah.
And then he names one
Oberon.
of his kids Eric.
Right. Right.
He's just he knew he was going to be
Yeah.
an asshole. He knew he was going to grow up and be an
Definitely.
asshole.
Yeah, random hooks up. My bad. With Corin pretty early on, and they try and travel to Amber.
He wasn't even originally trying to get hold of Corwin. Corwin, yeah.
Yeah.
He was trying to originally get hold of Flora.
Right.
But coincidentally,
Right.
got answered.
There's a
by
lot of
Corwin.
intrigue in the book.
Yeah.
A
Right.
lot of intrigue.
And
That's basically the entire thing is intrigue.
They
Well,
find
and again, like
Coincidences.
The first half of the book, I'll say, is it's very noir intrigue. It's almost kind of a crime story. It's like he's trying to figure out what happened to him. And the second one then turns into like medieval like
Siege wars.
clash of courts, and
Right.
it, like not to the level that Game of Thrones went to, but
I
it's
was about to
definitely
say.
like it's families and houses
Yeah.
battling one another.
let's go over the underwater city for just a minute.
Okay, the city of Rebma, which is a perfect reflection of Amber itself as there is, because it houses almost a perfect replica of the pattern. The pattern is what gives the royal family the ability to slide through the different realities.
And we meet the queen there, Moria.
Moira.
Moira.
Now, Moira, you think
Moira.
M-O-I-R-A, but M-O-I-R-E, because we need to get it more complicated.
And
right?
she's a little 50-50 on this whole, like, talking to the Princess of Amber kind of situation,
Yeah, I don't think many people. I
Yeah,
get the
like-
sense that not many
yeah.
people who aren't in that family
So
like that family.
yeah, so like Corwin's trying to like sweet talk her so he can can get to the pattern and get back home, while Random fucked up royally the last time.
We don't know. We're never told what he did, but it was not great.
Right.
No, we're told.
Yeah,
we're specifically told. Like he ran off with Moira's daughter.
Oh,
she came back with the child, and because he's half of the lineage of Amber, he tries to walk the pattern.
I forgot.
And
that.
I will go no further as far as what that may or may not be.
But needless to say, she's very angry with him.
Yes, so much so that she punishes him by forcing him to marry a blind lady.
Oh, poor him.
Yeah.
And
you could tell this was written in the 70s where you were just like, oh, man.
I guess I'm married.
The worst thing that he could do is marry a blind woman.
Right.
I'll stop here also to say just real quick, if they just had like a cell phone, they could have solved this all in 20 minutes. No, not really, but yeah.
Another thing, speaking of Reba, you when I mentioned that I was at this part when we were like talking about where we were in the book, you mentioned that there was a line in here that's one of your favorite lines of all time. What
No, you read it to me and I'll tell you whether or not it's if you're gonna if we're gonna engage in this, let's do this.
Okay. Is it See, now you fucked with my confidence. Thank you very much.
Build up confidence so you can be on top for once. I'm literally singing I'm the one who wants to be with you from Mr. Big. Okay, you're gonna show me the one that's highlighted?
Yes.
Yes, that is my favorite line of all time. Read that. Okay, so I'm going to set the scene for you. Again, a little bit of a spoiler. I apologize, but when you read this again, like the quality of the writing is going to shine through on this. Random is been sent off, and he's going to have to marry a blind lady. That's just weird. Okay, but whatever. The 70s. We got Corwin set aside. Moira comes to visit him. They start to get a little amorous. And instead of like giving you again, I think it's one of those. Instead of giving you a depiction of what happened,
right?
He hits you with this line.
Upon the couch, I gave her ballad. Her lips replied without words. There's a lot that's said in those two sentences. That's a really good. As soon as I saw that, I was like, "That's got to be
the line.
That's got to be the line."
That's
right.
This is actually
because once again,
that's one of the lines that does a lot. Like, there's a lot of heavy lifting in those two lines.
Yes.
Like,
absolutely.
And then 2 pages later, we totally fucking did it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because Random goes, "Hey, how was she?" Because Random's Random's a rogue in my opinion. Again, if we made it a D&D out of everybody.
But finally, Corwin makes it to the pattern, and that's when things start getting esoteric as fuck. On the explanation of how the pattern works, much like the cards.
I was going to do a little bit more research, and I apologize to the crew here and to the listeners. I wanted to know if there was any kind of inspiration from Huxley's The Doorways of Perception. Just because the notions of especially like with the passing through of realities that this family is able to do, was that something that he was either familiar with or had dabbled with, and something that he read into, and was that something that he then this is one of the things that helped inspire to produce this?
Yeah, I don't know.
And I didn't do it. Like I said, my bad. I didn't do enough research on that to kind of.
But there's like a lot of, like I said, with this magic system, there's a lot of interesting things. There's a lot of, as soft as it is and as vague as it is, there's still a lot of things to pick apart because it's an interesting way of looking at things. Because they also seem to have some control over probability, which is also an interesting thing. That's not something you see in fantasy very often. But also controlling different aspects. Sometimes it's time. Sometimes it's alternate, just straight up alternate realities, and then sometimes it's probability. Like that's a very, very interesting. And there's a lot of things to think about in that system. You usually don't get that much meat in a system, especially that vague. Like usually, just interesting ways that they use the system and everything like that. But this, there's a lot of deep thought. The implications of the system lead you to think of, and that's things that I like about.
And just kind of cutting in for the capstone on that. If this had been handled haphazardly, this book would have been garbage. You are dealing with some high-minded, heavy kinds of things, like you said. The ability to control reality itself. Well, if you have the ability to control reality, why can't you just do this and this? And there are limitations that are kind of put in place that I think are reasonable. They're rational, and they work out, and it doesn't make you nitpick the story. And I think if you have to think about a story as you're reading it, I think that's when the story loses somebody, because then you start wondering all the holes that you can poke in the narrative.
Yeah. I think the best thing that Zelazny does in this book is the moments of tension when they have a goal and they're trying to get to that goal, getting to the city of Redma, getting to Amber. Later in the book, there's a big thing that happens that is super tense. That's probably my favorite part in the book.
Right.
Is that tension that he's really, really good at building that tension, and like, oh my God, look at and the cost of things he's very good at explaining too.
Yeah, if he's not influenced by the Doors of Perception, I mean, I could see that. Looking up some quotes from that book itself, there is no examples of any sort of influence there. But this is from the Doors of Perception. To rush headlong into the comforting darkness of selfhood as a reborn human being, or even as a beast, an unhappy ghost, or a denizen of hell, anything rather than the burning brightness of an unmitigated reality.
Yeah.
That's some pretty heavy shit.
There are coincidences. I don't think he took from Huxley.
Right.
I don't.
Inspirational.
And it has been more than a decade since I read Doorways.
Mm-hmm.
I do say there's something in the back of my head that says something from that inspired him to write this.
Right.
I think. If I'm wrong, listeners, please let us all know. But specifically me, because I might be the dumbest.
So of course our protagonist eventually gets his way to Amber using the pattern, or the cards. You want to talk about the cards a little bit?
Because that also kind of brings it into the mystical as well.
Oh,
so
yeah, the cards are
early
very, very
on
interesting.
when he's with Flora, he finds a
Deck of-
group of tarot cards.
Deck of tarot cards.
And then he starts looking at it, and he starts again. It's the first attachment that he has back to Amber, and so it's this thing that reminds him of what.
Doesn't he see himself in one of those
Yes, he
portraits?
does.
Right,
He sees himself, and he starts to remember a little bit more about himself and about instances. Like he gets these little like snapshots in time of like incidences that happened between his brothers and him and his sisters and things like that, and also just the general feelings about that.
So
we know Eric's a bad guy immediately because it's like I saw I saw Eric. I didn't know why I hated him, but I hated him. Pretty much.
Right.
Very Doc Holliday line. For
Each
me.
one of these
Like,
cards
now I
represents
really hate him.
one of the family members.
But whenever he has that attachment to Amber, it brings back a piece of himself, and that's the first real big attachment to Amber outside of his sister.
Right. So the tarot cards allow him to fixate on a character on the card, and if they're willing to, let him transport to where they are.
At
Right.
the very least, contact them.
Yeah.
He can at least talk to
yeah.
them. Which is very, or travel, and then the pattern lets him travel.
And then again, the bloodline. Once they've walked the pattern, they're able to kind of fold reality amongst them. I can't remember the line in the book, but basically, it's like their remembrances of Amber, as they become more crystallized, they start moving towards the actual Amber, and then finally get there. Again, very heady, very esoteric. If you're not holding on, you might slip off. But if you're paying attention,
there's a lot of Buddhism in there.
I'll give you that.
Well,
Absolutely.
Enlightenment, transcending.
And you like you said, you might ask, okay, if they can just control reality and they can pull pieces of this reality and that reality in there, how do any of them lose? And it's because they all can do that, and so like one of them's pushing one way and the other one's pushing the other way. So they're a check on each other's power.
Right.
Oftentimes.
Yeah. And also like
You
they're
can't-
talking about
And the ways
ahead.
they do that are very interesting.
and they talk about again the line all roads lead to Amber. Well, in order to get from a destination, you have to take that trip.
You have
it's
to
not
go.
Just like
It's
that.
a
I'm
physical
I'm just
trip.
standing there. You're actually physically
Yeah.
going, and you're like again reality.
You're not supposed to be able to travel to Amber from the shadows, as
Yeah.
it were. Like that's
Yes.
why he had to make that trek to Relma, because he could not go from the shadows
Yeah.
to Amber directly. He had
because
to.
he'd forgotten it.
You have to find a way. And I think it's more of an internalized way, because there's a point where him and Random are both traveling in a car to try and get to Amber, and it's more of an internal thing there. You can't take somebody with you; they have to be able to go too.
And specifically, Random wants to help his brother, which I think again very subtly. They say it outright, but then also very subtly, you have this thing. Random's like the black sheep of the family.
Right.
And now one of his brothers is helping him, and he's helping him in return. And I think there's that bond of family there
Right.
that you don't have with almost the entire rest of the family.
There's a couple.
Yeah.
There's a couple of people that are kind of like, okay, let's meet up because I hate Eric too. And there's some alliances. Some of them, maybe loose. And then we get into the fucking like war siege that happens.
Yeah, and at that point, we're not, because we want you. Well, we might want you. We'll go with the recommendations from the table here in a little bit, but we're gonna stop very short of like the major points towards the end.
Right.
Ethan has been waiting.
I will say, for the entirety of Random joining Corin, trying to get back to Amber, I could not decide whether or not he was genuinely on Corin's side or he was just trying to essentially use him.
I think
for
he
his
was.
own
I think Random
advantage.
overall was looking out for himself.
Yeah.
But he was trying to make a sure bet with Corwin because, just for the audience, Corwin is trying to take the crown in Amber and be the next king in line.
Once he figures it all out.
Once he figures things out.
Even then, there's like when they mention, "Are you going to challenge?" And it's like, yeah, I'm going to challenge.
Right,
or,
right,
I'm thinking about challenging.
Yeah.
He might be.
And he's like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to be challenging.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But the fact that he keeps Zelazny, he keeps everything so vague with all the characters' intentions, with Random being vague as to whether or not he is on his side, with Flora in the beginning on whether or not she was she fully trusted Corwin. All of that is like very intriguing and kept me wrapped up
Also,
into
this
it.
is 119 pages at the beginning of a series, and it's almost like the first chapter of a 10-part chapter book.
Yeah.
Also, I think he could have stretched out one chapter and made it 9 to mirror the 9 princes. I thought that would have been funny. One thing we glossed over is like Corwin on Earth before he wakes up in the hospital bed has been on Earth for like a millennia, right?
Not a millennia. I
Close.
Think, there's a
plague.
plague. There's a
The
plague in
the
either
plague.
Paris or
He
London.
mentions the plague a lot.
16th century, I think.
60, okay, so
Okay.
again, it's either either
Like
Paris or
500-600
London.
years.
Yeah.
And he recovers from that plague, but that's when his amnesia kicked in.
Yeah.
So we're talking.
No, the amnesia kicks in later because it was a crash that caused the.
No. He even mentions about that, like the first time, like where I feel I lost my memory was in that plague because he was feverish, and when he came out, he kind of like literally walked to the earth,
Like,
which kind of makes me wonder how
Okay,
subconsciously was he around for 400 years? It kind of brings up the Highlander paradox of like every year you got to
Well,
find
yeah, like he talks about meeting Napoleon and
meeting
shit.
Meeting Napoleon. Well, there's some other people he meets too. Like, does he
Yeah,
meet-
that's the main one that sticks out, but I can't remember. But I know
Right.
there's
I remember
other people that
Napoleon.
he mentions.
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
didn't he say that like Eric did his best to keep him from not remembering anything? Like Eric was influencing his amnesia for that entire period.
The way I've kind of understood it, and again, anyone who has read this, both here at this table and in our studio audience on the internet, I put this question to you. The way I took it was, he lost his memory in the plague and was just kind of wandering the earth. Flora may have been put in place to keep an eye on him. And
Right.
with the coronation coming up sooner, as soon as it was for him, I think Eric didn't want to take the chance of him suddenly remembering again, and so they tried to take him completely out. That's my thought on that. I would love to hear, again, everybody at home who is listening to this over the internet, and everybody at this table right now. I want to hear what y'all think about that.
See, I interpreted it as and I might end up having to reread it, but I interpreted it as he recently lost his memory and he's just been kind of trapped on Earth lately because he didn't have the
Right.
the backing to go after.
And I'm sure
Crown.
Eric probably thought that none of the family would help him.
Yeah.
Also, Eric, I think I get this feeling that as long as Corwin was not in Amber, Eric could give 2 fucks what he was doing
Yeah.
because he was focused on the crown.
I respectfully disagree. I think he always saw Corwin as the one that
Had a chance.
that he couldn't control,
Right.
and could have, like, he couldn't control random, but he didn't give three shits about random.
Right.
Corwin was an entirely different beast.
Well, yeah, of course. There was a time where they were communicating, and Corwin tried to mind control Eric, and Eric's like, "Fuck this shit, I'm out."
Yeah.
No, actually, I think it starts with Eric trying to do that, and Corwin's like, "No, hell no," and then he just like snaps back at him.
Right.
It's equal, and then a lot of times it seems what happens with them is like they're equal, and then Corwin proves that he's better, and he run and then Eric
because unknown until you start getting into more of it. Each of the family members have their own special abilities.
Yeah, they kind of mentioned that.
Right.
And that was something
that
very intriguing.
each is somehow unaware of how they can do things comparably or non-comparably. So
there you go. All righty, I think we're pretty much good to kind of close this out. I would like to go to the table. I'll start it out. In my opinion, again, like I said, this is the best fantasy novel of all time. I would recommend it to people who like fantasy, who may not have had a chance to read this, that as far as typical fantasy tropes, even going so far back as 1970s, Zelazny was playing with these in a way that was novel. I think even to this day is not, pardon my pun with the word novel, but I think is very fresh. I think it is a very good story. Again, you've heard me wax glowingly about it. I would say this. If you like your books, matter of fact, like A, B, C, D, I would avoid this. I would avoid this book, and I would avoid the series because there was a lot of esoterica. The first part of it, again, is a noir thriller, so he's got to keep a lot of things in the vest and slowly kind of bleed them out to you. If you don't like reading stuff like that, I would avoid the Chronicles of Amber, and I would avoid Nine Princes in Amber. But for me, this is the best fantasy novel that has ever been written. Bar none, second to none.
for me, I think it's the best example of unconventional storytelling. I love narrative storytelling anyway. I like Lovecraftian stories for that reason. And there's so much focus on Corwin, at least like for the first third of that book, it's almost nothing but that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of esoteric, as you said, philosophical, inner monologue things that are happening. Along with everything else. And, again, that might be a lot for somebody to take, especially if you're just used to reading more modern fiction. So, depending on what you like, again, if you like cookie cutter, nothing against that, but if you like cookie cutter, conventional storytelling that is aimed at, a point-to-point story with a plot that's easily readable, then yes, this is not going to be for you. But again, it's, the first book's only 119 pages, so maybe give it a shot.
I fall under that category of just straight to the point storytelling, not wanting to keep everything vague. I can see how Nine Princes of Amber influenced a lot of books that I've read. I can see a lot of inspiration from the Amnesia storyline and Heroes of Olympus. But I can see how a lot of people would enjoy this type of book. Me being under that category, I very much enjoyed listening to this book. I enjoyed listening to all the vivid details that Zelazny had about just the surroundings, the trip to Amber, all the intricate relationships that Corwin has with all of his siblings and all the siblings towards each other. I can definitely see how this book is among the top tier of science fiction.
Wait, so you just you did this through audiobook? You didn't read it?
I'm sorry.
No.
I'm
sorry.
All of his,
Bring out the oils.
All of his opinions don't
Bring
count.
out the oils.
Real people, real fans.
One question.
Real fans. Read the book. I'm sorry.
I did read the book.
I'm sorry. This is just.
I do need to say
calm
this.
down. This is just a joke.
So at one point,
Audiobooks are a valid
audiobooks
way
are very valid.
to get books read into your brain.
This is an old joke going back.
At what
pretty
point,
far.
Ethan, did this novella tell you that it was science fiction?
probably around the time of getting to the Reflection City. The name escapes me. I can't.
Redmum.
Right.
When it got to that point of them going down the staircase, breathing under the water, it was like, oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
It's fantasy though.
Yeah.
It's a fantasy story.
fantasy, science fiction,
Yeah,
all same
it's
thing.
not.
No. Okay, now we're getting the oil.
No.
We are
Direct
getting the
all
oil.
angry emails to
Email is travelers on the omnibus at gmail.com. No. In the RE. Ethan is a fool. Ethan is a tool. Make sure it rhymes. I swear before Holy God.
The views of Ethan do not reflect the views of the rest of the
Quick,
Hold
Ethan.
on.
Ice
Random-
Pirate, Science Fantasy, or Science Fact?
Repeat that. I couldn't hear it.
Ice
No,
Pirates.
The berating, yelling
no.
of Jay.
No. We're going to burn him in oil. We're not going to torture him with ice pirates.
That movie's awesome.
Brady,
What are you
for the
talking
love
about?
of God, please bring civility
Reel
back
it
to
in.
this.
Reel it in.
Okay. For me, this is going to be, I'm going to say a soft recommend. There are a lot of things that I liked about this book, and there are a lot of really interesting concepts. I will say, understand that while the initial book is not too much of an investment, less than really for the copy that I had is way less than 200 pages, barely over 100.
119.
119.
Yeah.
It's a small investment, but it's a story that scratches the surface. I think you get some very interesting things in the first one, but I feel like to really get the most out of this story, I'm going to have to continue through. And the whole thing total 10 books now is a little over
Like 1,100 pages.
looks like about 1,300.
Okay.
Maybe around that.
Let me say this. There is a natural stopping point. The first 5 are about Corwin. The second 5 are about his son. If you stop at book 5, that's the Corwin cycle.
Yeah.
I think you're good to kind of stop there. If you want to keep going, you have 5
Right.
more books to go.
Because
after
that's
that.
like a 20-year difference too, right? In
Okay.
writing.
Oh,
But,
yeah.
like he
Yeah.
stopped after that 5th book.
The writing is encompassed in the early to, I want to say, late 70s for the first 5. The last 5 starting around mid 80s to just at the start of the 90s.
Yeah, like Trump's came out in like 87 or 88 or something.
Okay.
That's
Well,
the 4th.
and that's about, just flipping through my copy, that's about 600 pages. So that's not terrible. That's
Right.
a normal
Average novel right
that's an
there.
Average novel.
And
so.
I'll also say, for him, Zelazny passed away in 1995. There were some additional precursor books that were written with under his notes. I cannot remember the name of the author. Those are not necessary. Like for the full, like in my opinion, like canon series, it's the 10.
Yeah.
But if you want to stop at 5 and
Right.
you have Corwin's story be the end point,
And
I think it's a great end
If
point
I'm going to
for it.
plug anything, also, it's the me and Brady both have the same copy of the book.
Yeah.
And I believe it's how's it pronounced?
The Great Book of Amber.
The Great Book of Amber. It's the Chronicles of Amber, books 1 through 10, and I think it was $25 on Amazon.
both of y'all got that from Amazon.
We
right?
both got it from
both
Amazon.
got
It's like
that.
$25.
So
Yeah.
the Great Book of Amber, again, collects the 10 stories that make up the 2 arcs of the Chronicles of Amber.
Okay, yeah, but I do want to give it the caveat that you're going to get an interesting part of a story if you just do the one, I think, but I feel like I'm definitely going to have to read the other ones
got
to get the most out of this story. And maybe that will, a lot of the issues that I have in the first book will be at least somewhat assuaged.
Yeah, it'll retcon it for you like the last Spider-Man retconned Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 for most of the fan base.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, now we're really getting into spoilers.
Yeah.
But like I said, I have my issues with the book. It's not perfect to me. It's your favorite. I completely understand that. We all have our favorites, and not everybody's gonna. A lot of my favorite things,
And
people's not gonna like. And I completely. I used to be an asshole about that. You know?
Right.
No.
But
let
I
me-
try very hard to not be.
And let me also say this. One of the best things about fandoms, in my opinion, is that you have the ability to love what you love and respect that other people may not because they have different viewpoints. They come from different walks of life. They may have different feelings about how things go. Being able to sit down and talk those out and see other perspectives with an open mind is one of the best things you can do. Again, anything and everything that was said here today, I do not take any offense by the fact that, again, my favorite fantasy novel of all time, other people don't look at it in as high esteem or cannot connect with it. That is entirely fine because, and I've said this before in a time long since past, find your favorite blank. Find those things in your life that mean something to you, that impact you, and be able to express that, and be open and to be able to express that, and be confident that you can find people who are positive enough to listen to that and maybe not agree with you, but are certainly willing to listen to what you have to say.
I definitely agree with that. Something that I thought about, and this might extend this podcast for a little bit longer, and I know we've already done our final thoughts, but something that did pop up in my head. Why do we think that this series isn't as well known or popular as other series? Because
of
until
the esoterica.
Until y'all had mentioned this, I had, but like, there's plenty of things out there, both sci-fi and fantasy that are very esoteric.
I would argue. See, give me an example.
Well, like you said, most of Huxley's stuff is very esoteric and
It's very esoteric, but who's making a Huxley novel into like a movie or some sort of long form TV series?
But yeah, but like stuff like Lord of the Rings and stuff was known before the book. There was a fandom before. Why do we think that the
Amber series was also very well known? What I think happened, like Lord of the Rings being, not the first fantasy, but I would certainly say the first mass,
because it came out in the 50s.
Yeah, I would say the first mass market fantasy of the era where...
And it didn't do well when it came out. It was like 10 to 15 years when the hippies picked it up that it started in the late 60s.
And then caught a culture with it. And
right, I watched a documentary on that.
I think there's stuff there. Amber was written between, I want to say, again, 70 and 77.
Right.
What comes out in 77? And I don't want to blame just this.
Star Wars.
Star Wars comes out.
Mm-hmm.
You also have the reawakening of Star Trek in motion picture form. You had, and then in the 80s when he's starting and finishing up
in the early to mid 80s, almost every fantasy project or sci-fantasy project fucking fails in the box office. Yeah. Dune fails in the box office. Kroll fails at the box office. Tron fails at the box office.
And I don't think just because those are fantasy and science fiction. I think of it more along the lines of
the culture.
These things are very there's very vivid storytelling in just this first book. Yeah. To me, this is the reason why I respect out of all the Marvel movies. It's not my favorite one, but I respect Doctor Strange more so than anything else because you are playing with that esoterica and you have to present something right. Of all people, Roger Corman. Roger Corman made the first acid movie called The Trip, like the first majorly released acid trip. How do you describe an acid trip? They even did of all things with that movie, they went out to Big Sur and they had a scheduling table of who would take the acid and who would watch them and how they would describe it, trying to codify what this experience is. And the real bottom line of that is you can't describe an acid trip. It's very personal, but it's also very subjective to that person. The same thing I think is at play here at Amber because you are playing with reality,
and philosophy, how they play with reality. Esoteric stuff.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff here that you've got to have a baseline for, and by the sheer nature of what Amber is, there is no baseline.
Also,
even Amber as the one true reality, the one true city, even that. It isn't ours, so it's a little off. Yeah. So it could be off-putting for people.
Also, me personally, I could say that Lovecraft didn't take off for a long time.
Yeah, for a way long time.
Not comparing Lovecraft to Zelazny at all, but I think that
I think it's a valid comparison to go that something that now has such impact, you can't go. I think we can go 3 stores down and something has a little Cthulhu puppet in it. That's how ubiquitous it is.
All it takes is one person that has some sort of sway to mention this book series anywhere, and it'll be like an underground thing, and then all of a sudden, Amber's going to be everywhere.
Well, with that being said, this is something I'm reading right now. There was a TV adaptation being thought of in 2016 by the producers of The Walking Dead, but there hasn't been any word about that since 2016, so I don't know if that's still being talked about or not. But there was also a 3-part comic adaptation in 1996. So
I don't doubt that. That's a little bit easier to do than visual medium.
It's easier to get a book to print. I say that, but in my head, just logistics-wise, I think it's easier to get a book to print than it is to have bring 100 people together as cast, crew, marketing, and all that to create basically adapt the product, produce the product, and then sell the product to the public.
Yeah.
I think, like, for instance, Game of Thrones is medieval Jerry Springer done with a little bit of class.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot of class, but
Right.
just a little bit of class.
Right.
Yeah.
That people can latch on to that and can attach to that. Star Wars, young kid wants to see the galaxy, ends up saving the galaxy. Okay, again, these kind of basic stuff here.
Swashbucklers in space.
It's the hero's journey.
The hero's journey, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, Amber again. So much is hidden from you in just that first book, and yeah, it's just how do you present that in a medium, like, because to me, like, books don't just stay books anymore. Books get written to be optioned.
Yeah,
Right.
That's just my thought on that.
Especially nowadays. Yeah.
Especially so, if you can't visualize that, if you can't easily visualize that, I think it's a detriment to that thing ever becoming a production. I was surprised Wheel of Time became a series, but then I think it's an Amazon series.
Yeah.
Amazon takes a lot of risks. Netflix takes a lot of risks.
Netflix nowadays doesn't take as many.
Not as
risks.
many.
They'll
but
take a risk on a season and then be like, nope.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
to be fair, like when they started out and they realized that they had to start creating their own stuff because once once people figured out, wait, we could just stream this stuff ourselves.
What Netflix does is they option things from other countries, so it brings in those. But the things that Netflix makes nowadays, kind of, there's the meme of the Netflix sheen on things where they kind of do it like the Marvel universe, where they're trying to get everything to kind of look the same. They, I would argue that, but like Apple TV takes a lot. For God's sakes, Apple TV did Foundation, a TV series.
Apple TV did a retelling of the life of Emily Dickinson, starring Haley Steinfeld, which not my cup of tea, but you know what? Bravo.
Yeah.
Right.
Not something I would have considered ever been produced.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some of these streaming services are taking a little bit more risk than others, but like for me it was just weird, like, and I don't even mean like making, but like the fact that I oftentimes read like lists of like, hey, these are the greatest fantasy books of all time, and I've never never seen this one on them.
Right.
So when Jay and Jody like talked about this book, I was like, oh man, I've never heard of this in my entire life.
Honestly, this is what 30 years of time might do, because of all things, Inquest Magazine used to be one of the sources for Magic the Gathering strategy. A source, not the best source, a source for Magic the Gathering strategy, deck lists, things like that. They would also have things inside of nerd and pop culture they would talk about, and one of the things was like the 100 science fiction and fantasy books to read before you die. Number one was the Chronicles of Amber. Like, the first thing they mentioned was Chronicles of Amber, and that's where I picked up to read it, and I've always been grateful.
Also, there's a diceless RPG based off of the Chronicles of Amber.
Ethan, so magazines are a thing that we used to, so websites used to be in small book form.
Really?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes, they were produced monthly or bi-monthly.
Monthly or bi-monthly.
Sometimes they like shoved like perfume in between the pages, and it stunk the whole magazine.
Yeah, that was very interesting. Getting
And
a men's magazine with men's
there would
perfume.
be three
You never knew.
There would be 3 pages of content, and then 2 pages of ad,
Right.
then 2 pages of content, and 3 pages of ad,
Yes.
and it would alternate backwards and forwards. So if you think
We have
pop-up
no
ads-
idea why magazines aren't really a thing anymore. It's weird.
I will never escape this trope, will
Hey,
I?
If
no,
you
you
think-
won't, especially when we talk about video game magazines on an episode of the show.
Yeah.
Let me just say this: if you think pop-up ads are annoying in the digital age, when it was analog, that shit was annoying.
Oh yeah,
But it was like a lot quicker. You just like flip the pages.
yeah.
Flip the page.
We came dangerously close to starting to talk about Nintendo Power, so I'm going to announce that the bus is pulling into its final station for the night.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to add? Anything just in random? Again, we have no studio audience this week, so we cannot take questions for the bus. Does anyone want to add anything for random?
If it's any constellation, Brady.
Constellation.
No,
A constellation
wait, the
is
Big
a set
Dipper's
of
overhead right
stars.
now.
Constellation. I
That's
did not
staying in.
pay for the book. I used my free trial for the book.
That's even worse.
That's a okay. So for For legal purposes, we
Hold
do
on,
not.
we stopped at the wrong stop. We got to go another mile or two. Go for it, Brady.
For legal purposes, we do not advise
Using your free
using
points.
free trials to just get free books off of Audible. None of us have really ever done that. I'm sure Ethan will eventually buy an Audible book or keep his subscription. That's what we're going to assume.
This podcast is sponsored by Audible. No, it's not. No, it's not. It was.
Use code Traveler for nothing.
For nothing. If you use code Traveler and it works, let us know.
Yeah, please.
Just let us know.
Use
because
Raycon Shadow Legends as your code.
Let's get our thank yous and our shout outs. We mentioned them before, but again, my thanks to Greg Spanier and all the crew at MacNarb Gaming
you,
for
Greg.
providing
Thank
this
you, Greg.
wonderful
Greg.
studio space for which we can record in. Who wants to take what podcast as a quick thank you? You know what? You don't get to do Fearology. It's your podcast. This man's gonna pimp Fearology for everybody. Go for it.
For people in the audio medium, he was pointing at me. Fearology is a podcast that our friend Jody, you may have heard of him, does, where he talks about horror movies, and he keeps saying he'll have guests. Maybe, I don't know.
I'll have to record another episode for that to happen.
Yeah. It is bi
Monthly?
now. We're not quite to biannually.
I've been working
yet.
on music for the intro and outro of this show, so I haven't recorded that.
no.
Yeah.
Dude, your podcast is by?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Hell yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
Hey.
Jody, pick one of the two that are left.
Our friends, Michael Hill and Jason Holder, they like whiskey and wrestling. And you might not like either one of those things, but you should still listen to the show because they're very entertaining fellows. They'll probably go over tonight's episode of AEW, I would imagine.
New Jack came back from the dead and is wearing Sting's face paint, and that's all I'm going to
Yeah,
say about that.
apparently
There were
Sting-
some spots where Sting almost died twice,
Yeah.
and Jeff Hardy as well,
Jeff Hardy almost died. A lot of people almost died on this episode.
By process of elimination.
and
Ethan,
botches.
You have to give us the promo for Silence Your Cell Phones.
Do you like movies? Do you like TV shows? Do you want people to tell you what you should and should not be listening to? Go on over to Silence Your Cell Phones, Jared Hubbard and Kevin Shelton. They go into deep dives on various movies and TV shows every week. They have a live show every Wednesday on YouTube, also at Silence Your Cell Phones. Go check them out. Tell them we said hello.
There you go. If you want to get in contact with us, we have an email, travelersontheomnibus@gmail.com. If you want to email your questions, comments, and suggestions, again, if you were offended by anything Ethan said, if you drop the right phrase, we will cause a punishment for him. I don't know yet, but we will see. But it will be a humane
Where
punishment.
can they find our show, Jay?
Where can they find our show? Wherever good podcasts are found. Currently, we're going to be on Anchor FM. Right now, it is still up in the ephemera, but we look to be on Spotify, hopefully Apple Podcasts, Google Play Podcasts, and on, you know what, iHeartRadio.
Hell yeah.
So there you
All
go.
the-
Throw it
all
out
the
there. Why
things.
not?
Absolutely. So I'm going to give everybody a final piece of advice, and I'm going to send everybody off. My advice from the bus this week. If you in your life can always find someone to share a pizza with, you lived a pretty good life. Good job.
Solid advice.
Solid advice.
Always read alone.
That's a
No, get those. So Saturday Night Live once had like this joke where like it was the lover's toilet where like the toilet was pointed at each other.
Oh,
If you can find a toilet and that's pointed at another person and just read to the other one, not one of you read to the other, both of you read to the other at the same time, two completely different things. They should make that an Olympic sport.
If you lock eyes while taking a shit across from your significant other, you're never fucking again. Because there's going to be a moment at time where you just, that memory's going to
or
trigger.
I'm actually
Time to
going to
say
cut
bye.
this part out just to cut the shit part
It
out.
got weird.
No. I'm going to keep in I'm going to cut this part out, and then there's going to be a mystery as to what the fuck were they talking about. So,
Let's just leave all
from
that in.
James McCarthy,
Jody Kight.
Ethan Skinner.
Brady Davis.
we are travelers on the omnibus. Join us next time when we talk about RPGs and how to build a better one. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and good night.